I want to respond to a really good question that was asked in the comments section of the last video. I think it was the last video. And also to address a problem that I've discovered with my channel and that's been criticized. So this is kind of compelling me to shift focus a little because I think it's kind of necessary. So I'm going to implement a change in how I present this channel. The essence of the problems I'm running across with the difficult task I've set for myself, which is something like trying to figure out a way to use Pirsig's work as a modality of psychotherapy. And so that's going to be reflected in this exchange, the problem I'm running across between these two commentators, in a way at least. The problem is reflected in here. And so the two commentators are Van and Paul. And I mention Paul frequently because he helps me out a lot because he understands Pirsig very well. So Van asks this question, and it's a three-part question. What makes you think Pirsig's metaphysics of quality offers a recipe for people to work out what is good? And number two, if the metaphysics of quality is indeed a recipe for helping us work out what is good, why should we accept that recipe? Because the recipe itself has been worked out, one, by someone else, and two, that someone else admits to having been insane. And the third part, isn't mankind setting herself up as the ultimate arbiter of everything that is good, usurping God's role, which is to say, make the same mistake as Satan? This was covered in C.S. Lewis, I believe. So Paul answers to the first part of the question, what makes you think Pirsig's metaphysical quality is a recipe for what is good? He answers, metaphysical quality is more like a good intellectual posture, a framework to organize the meat of evolution. Yes, of course, I agree with Paul on this. It's a good intellectual posture to try to get into the framework that it can include the most. And considering the trajectory of evolution, you really have to have a theory of everything, and that is what the metaphysics of quality is. The meat of evolution sums up our full experience because Pirsig includes the subjective, social, and intellectual levels, not just the material, organic, and biological levels. And those are the levels that occur in the rationalist materialist worldview that we are hopelessly embedded in, and this is the problem that I keep addressing. The meaning crisis problem is that we're embedded in this rationalist materialist worldview, and a lot of people in this corner agree with me on this one. So anyone who knows Pirsig realizes that besides the Tao Te Ching, this is probably the only philosophy that I know of that includes everything, the philosophy rationally sees all of experience as equally real. There's nothing left out, and this addresses all the extraneous philosophical and otherwise problems which he referred to as platypi, such as what is the mind-matter problem. For example, matter exists, and it evolves into biology, which evolves into social patterns, from which comes intellect. So intellect is an evolution. It's in this trajectory of evolution. It's not matter's over here and intellect is here. In between are these other levels. So it does evolve from matter, and that makes these all patterns that are sequential in evolution. In a way, they're sequential. I mean, there's more nuance than that. So one level supports the other, but they also exist independently. And Paul's going to provide an analogy of that working together and still being independent in the answer to question 2. And the reason I think it helps us work out what's good is the closer you are to something that represents the totality of our reality, the more likely it is you have a solid foundation, which if you begin there, if you begin with something that explains everything, you can better, you're better grounded. It just makes sense. And if in that grounding, if you orient yourself towards the good, you're much more likely to actually identify what truly is good in terms of the whole shebang, let's just say. And you're more likely to stay on track, since the basis of everything in Pirsig's philosophy is the good. And he assures us that we actually know what is good. He demonstrated this in the classroom. that he has stated this, that there is a good, and it's not just found within one religion or philosophy or another, but it is in fact the originator of the universe, is just about the most important thing about Persig's philosophy we need to know, at least in my opinion it is. So how do we know this? How do we know this on a personal level? It may take some true soul searching to reveal that. Maybe we're blocked from this soul searching. Maybe our minds are just too oppressive to be quiet, to have that peace of mind. But maybe we just need to get ourselves to a point in which what we perceive to be good isn't hidden from us behind barriers of survival defenses. And most defenses originate in a kind of a younger survival mind, and they really stick with us. And a lot of therapy is about overcoming these defenses. And this is what therapy, spirituality, and the love of friends and family are for. Because these defenses are the bases of all the traps that Persig has described. An inability to see other value systems, because we're blinded by our own, and related, a sense that if we dial down our ego, we will disappear. And that's actually has a basis in childhood. We really feel like if we don't assert ourselves one way or another, usually through anger, we will be annihilated. It's an origin of a lot of problems. And of course, the fear that we'll make a mistake. So that's anxiety. So maybe most important of all is a necessity to develop a comfort with not knowing, with that mu state, a willingness to drift laterally until real quality, not just some easy answer, presents itself. This is why, for example, I contrast now, sorry, for you Persig purists, I contrast Peugeot with Persig. While Peugeot is oriented towards the highest good in the form of a Christian God, which, of course, if we're looking at the big picture trajectory of evolution, that's a barrier towards real quality. I understand that. There are people who need a narrative structure that orients us in the world in a workable way. And Peugeot has a metaphysics that is as close to the bottom of reality you can get for a dualistic philosophy. Because it's so close to the bottom, let's just say. Maybe that's a gateway drug to the metaphysics of quality. I don't know. That's just a thought. I mean, I don't know where I want to go with that. But do you understand what I mean? Within a dualism, it's the best we've got. It's heaven and earth. You know what I'm saying? And again, as I've mentioned before, who's to say that God isn't the ability to make a choice, to choose the good instead of the bad? Maybe that is God in itself, in which case God and good and quality, they're very much related to one another if they're not the same thing. And Persig kind of implied that they're the same thing. Persig knew this, and that's why his rationality is a spiritual rationality. It goes back and forth between mystical experience and connection, let's just say the flow state, and precise addressing of a low-quality situation as it emerges so you can transform it into a high-quality situation. And sometimes you actually have to go into irrational materialistic world to do that, to manipulate the gears, etc. And then you get back in the flow state, and then as you encounter a problem, you again manipulate. But experientially, we're limited creatures, and limitation applies that we can't be connected we're connected eternally to the one, let's just say, but to actually live as human beings in the world, we have these limitations, so there's no way we cannot live without a dualism. So even Persig knows this, which is why he writes a book about quality. He writes a book about quality that can't be named. Logos has to come out of mythos. Otherwise, we are that eternal one and part of this trajectory. But as living beings in the world, manifestation is necessary. So the answer to question 2, which was if the metaphysical quality is indeed a recipe for helping us work out what is good, why should we accept it? Because it's been worked out by someone else and because that person was insane. So Paul answers, the merits of applying a metaphysical idea can be described in contrast to other metaphysical ideas, which Persig makes a fine job of, but the practical application is a tricky thing. This is where I'm running into problems. A metaphysics is not reality, more a counterpart that has a two-way relationship with reality. It's a map, it's not the road. Think of it as wine tasting, and the metaphysics offering the fundamentals or primer. Knowing the process of grape to fermentation to alcohol doesn't change the taste of the wine, but it interacts to delve deeper into its qualities. It seems rather banal to point out insanity and revelation often go together. The insanity was from revelation. It was from realizing that for 2,000 years we've been totally misguided. Remember that Nietzsche, he didn't go insane from what he learned. He had some kind of organic problem, but he was pretty antisocial, so was Pirsig, and had some proclivities that you could definitely say were disordered if you want to, but when you have that much insight into reality, it's pretty hard to be a normal person. So I agree 100% with what Paul said. The wine tasting analogy is beautiful, but what I can do is point out the dead-on practical application is nearly impossible. You can't take the map and make that the journey. And this is what I'm discovering because I've taken on this Herculean task of trying to translate Pirsig's philosophy into some psychotherapeutic modality, and that's not what was intended to do with this work. And I'm going to have to rethink what I'm doing here to some degree, but I have to believe you can get close. In my heart, I know that the kind of mental peace and engagement pointed at by this work is available. The mystical traditions of all major religions have some element of what it takes to get close, but the practical application, again, requires a dualism. It requires a being in the world. So you pick your poison as to how you're going to get there. Mine tends to be spiritual and psychotherapeutic interventions. And then the answer that Paul gives to number 3, isn't mankind setting herself up as the ultimate arbiter of everything that's good, usurping God's role? So Paul says, quality is fundamentally not part of the self. It is merely the glue between selfish subjects and other objects. It is necessarily the source of both. Literally placing quality in your worldview is near impossible because it is all pervasive, the medium of reality. Quality is as logically inescapable, pragmatic, and down-to-earth as an evocation of God or the one, as you'll find. Right, we're going back to what we were saying about that. Rather than usurping God, metaphysical quality is an intellectual, abstract rendering of the same human perspective. So perhaps no replacement for social ritual, nor does ritual replace the all-embracing lift a clean metaphysics offers. So I think what he's saying here is they can work hand in hand. A lot of Christians are Buddhists, so there's a similarity because Buddhism is a very good, has metaphysical qualities. It's not the metaphysics of quality, but it has metaphysical qualities that can really help you understand things like Christianity better or anything else. A lot of people use Buddhism along with their religion. So there's a similarity in that, let's just say. You could be a Christian and still appreciate and live within the metaphysics of quality. I believe you can. Maybe some of you don't, but I do. So yes, quality is beyond all conception. It's the good that pervades everything. Even in its absence, there is still good in the fact that something bad can be transformed. And I think that that's the key to understanding quality through a Christian lens, is that quality, if you are Christian, is God-given, meaning all that is low quality has the potential to be transformed. That is the promise religion offers in its purest form. And let's go back to Peugeot or Christianity in general. You can have God at the top of your hierarchy, but the very act of putting God at the top of the hierarchy is to acknowledge as a Christian or another religious person that this is the greatest good, and this choice that you're making to put God at the top can only be made through an acknowledgement of what is good, what has the most quality. Well, in this worldview, in this system, it's God. So let me talk about choice for a minute and go back to question 1. If you want the ability to make a choice in the direction of quality, That doesn't mean that the outcome itself is going to be good. But if it isn't good, that gives you an opportunity to be better prepared for a better choice or to improve that outcome. Quality decisions guide us, and maybe sometimes they guide us what ends up being the wrong path, but it's that wrongness, that low quality, that allows us to desire to fix it, to transform it. So even if you make a mistake, you can correct it, and that is what this trajectory is. Again, this requires honing your relationship with what is good, which is kind of what I'm trying to do here with this channel, is learn and teach how to do that. And to do that, you may need some, if not a lot, of personal work. You really do have to get rid of, you really have to understand your defenses and be able to dial down your ego, or dial it up sometimes. So really, we all need to do a lot of personal work all the time, and that is roughly the same trajectory as fixing what is low quality, but we're doing it within ourselves and trying to improve. So we use that mechanism, of course, in our own inner world to make ourselves the, I don't want to say the best self we can be, but what I think is a great way of looking at it, and this might be, even in terms of an evolutionary framework, is we're trying to make ourselves the most integrated, complete beings we can be. The more whole we can be, the better, the higher quality. I think ultimately what this takes is a desire for good, and that means that desire is bigger than your preconceived notions or your ego. So how do you get that desire? Well, you just get it. Sometimes you just get it. And I don't know if you can force it. Something has to happen where you want. I mean, we all have the seeking system, the Panksepp seeking system towards what's better. But to desire what's really good, I think it's becoming aware that a different way of looking at things exists. And when you understand that quality is at the root and inheres in everything, that is a complete shift of consciousness. And it certainly makes you want to operate in that framework. So actually reading Pirsig's material, I believe, will help you, kind of like a religious text, orient towards the good. It's very necessary for us to figure out what's good right now, because the world is at the tail end of this subject-object reductionist, materialistic way of looking at things, and has forgotten what it means to be a whole being in the totality of existence. So this is why I said to Van why Pirsig's work is so important now. The last thing that Paul says, which is really nice, I might have avoided your first question, about why metaphysics of quality is going to help you find the good. Obviously, people find good with or without metaphysics of quality. More often than not, I'll find something good before I work out what the dynamic shift from one pattern to another was. And in more complex situations, the interaction between the levels of evolution and the metaphysics of quality. And he's kind of saying you have to look in a way after the fact, after this is all manifested. Rendering this post-good overview, I believe, has a cumulative effect, embedding the meta-pattern of evolution. Meta-pattern of evolution, that is nice. The feedback being more immediately aware of the need for change, low-quality static patterns, and recognizing the moment of change, dynamic quality plus new static patterns. Okay, so you can read this question and all the responses. I'm not going to put it on a split screen or anything. You just go back to my last video, and since I don't get 300 comments, you'll find it easily. Now, related to this question, I want to address some criticism I've had lately. And the gist of this criticism is that I'm trying to pin down Pirsig's work in already established systems such as religion and such as psychotherapy. That's true. And I use other systems too. I mean, sometimes I try to do it with Ken Wilber, for example. So I'm trying to implement this from the top down, and it's not really working. I'm always trying to find this common ground, and in doing so, I end up diminishing this theory of everything. So I should take that back. I shouldn't say it's not working. What it isn't doing is it's not the best use of Pirsig as philosophy. I am reducing it and using it to implement these systems. I agree with my my critics. I agree with my critics on this one. In terms of pure understanding of Persig, you are looking for the natural trajectory of quality, and this means not allowing any one social pattern to dominate your exploration. You are looking at, as Paul said, the meta pattern of evolution, and that's a cumulative series of patterns. And so you're seeing how that happens and seeing where it's going. So I'm going to revise this channel a little. That doesn't mean I'm going to change the content too much. I actually like the content as an expression of my voice and my journey, and it's going to remain an exploration into what is good and how an exploration of what is good can actually help you, live a quality existence. But I'll probably claim less fealty to Persig, since the fact of the matter is I do throw up what my one viewer said, fences. I do box myself in to deal with problems right now in people's lives, and I don't know any other way to do it. When you think about it, even Persig had to throw up fences. The metaphysics of quality, the levels kind of are fences, but they describe the big picture better than anything else. So if you have to actually articulate something, if you have to use logos, the metaphysics of quality levels are the best we can do, I think. But that's the point of view I'm coming from. So it's from within this realm of the metaphysics of quality and Persig's work and the understanding of quality, et cetera, that I want to stay. So I want to stay as this is my foundation, where the quality is. Therefore, I think it's best to make this a channel that is inspired by and references Persig. But I really have to take off, let's just say, the mantle of Persig. I'm not a philosopher, I'm a practitioner, so it's not my purview at this time to be a grand interpreter of Persig's philosophy. I'm trying to make individual lives and my own better on a practical level. And I think this will be freeing, because as long as I present this channel as primarily an investigation of Persig's work, I do a disservice to my viewers who are Persig purists, who are more philosophically oriented, because they come here and are disappointed by the narrowness of the way I'm using Persig. And it's also disservice to my viewers who I could be reaching with a broader scope, who want to share approaches to breaking down these barriers and defenses that are keeping them to connecting to what's good and subsequently to our true selves. And Persig has tools. I can't really improve on them. Everything you need to live a quality existence is in the Gumption Shatapa. Basically, these tools help you connect to what's good. And that really is what a quality existence is all about, to be able to know the good and to be able to act on it appropriately or in a harmonious way with it. So here is something that one of my critics said as to how I should approach Christianity in a Persigian sense. I'm not going to do it for the reasons that I told you, because this isn't a channel about philosophy, but what he said was really beautiful. So I want to read it just because it's great. So he said, maybe consider the following approach. Give the theologians a voice, but as a convener, invite expansion, generalization, and metaphysical reflection, such as, Christ died for something that he believed was good. Clearly that goodness preceded him and validated him. Christness. This is the arete of the Greeks, the writ of the Hindus, the Zoroastrian ahors, the Tao. To a mother, it is, listen to this is just lovely. To a mother, it's the laughter of her child. To the birds, perhaps the flight of the fledgling. To the farmer, a verdant crop to feed their kin with. The well-being of kin being a good test of what is good, for God created us in his kindness too. The Christ restored our faith once again, where others before and after have done so repeatedly. God didn't just fashion one vessel for us to cross upon. God, which Persig reminds us, is a cognative good. It is this goodness, this antipode of bad on the quality continuum, that makes the pre-Christian Isaac and Job, David and Jonah worthy of note. Of course it does. Remember, okay, so he brings in Alan Watts because he knew I was a big fan of Alan Watts. Remember what Alan Watts said of Christ, that they deified him so they could frustrate his mission of a democratized spirituality. That's not good. That's not quality. So then he asked me, are you teaching quality? So to which I have to answer, no, I'm not teaching quality. I'm looking for it in the weeds at the foot of that mountain where most of us live most of the time. So I think the best strategy for me going forward is to relinquish the claim that I'm a Persig-only channel and take him on as a sage and influence. Maybe someday, after a lot of work, I'll see you in the high country. I'm still going to do the Lila reading and commentary, of course, and Persig will always be close at hand. Persig demonstrated to us that the good is real, and that is invaluable, and that is the aspect I hope to guide my work. Also, I'll probably do a new channel introduction, and I've already done a little revamping of the graphics to remove the Lila bird. I'm keeping the Korean wall, and that lines up well with my new obsession, someone whose work is a fence, but it's a very permeable fence, and who is very influenced by Persig, and you'll see shortly. So thanks to the people who contributed, Van, Paul, and Hirsch, and really to everyone. That's why I'm here. You know, I do want these exchanges, even if they're painful, even if they're critical. I get into a trap sometimes, I lick my wounds, and I come out of another one. So I hope that made sense, and I will see you next time.